March 6, 1943. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel is reviewing intelligence reports at his command post. Maps cover the table showing recent German victories, the Americans' first major engagement in North Africa, and their worst defeat. His Afrika Korps staff officers stand around the table, analyzing prisoner interrogations and captured documents. The mood is confident, almost relaxed. The Americans, they agree, are inexperienced. Green, poor coordination. No match for veteran German forces. Then an Abwehr intelligence officer enters without knocking. He's carrying a single sheet of paper, a decoded intercept. He walks directly to Rommel and places it on the table. Rommel picks it up, reads it once, then reads it again. His expression doesn't change, but his posture stiffens. He sets the paper down slowly. When? Rommel asks. The officer checks his notes. He took command 2 days ago, Herr Feldmarschall, March 4th. Rommel stares at the map for a long moment. His officers wait, uncertain. Finally, Rommel looks up and says something that makes every officer in the room straighten their backs. Gentlemen, he says quietly, the war in Africa just became considerably more difficult. The intercept is clear. Major General George S. Patton Jr. has taken command of II Corps, the same American force Rommel shattered at Kasserine Pass just 2 weeks ago. The same units he'd called not ready for combat in his reports to Berlin, and now Patton, the one American general Rommel has been tracking since before the war, is rebuilding them. If you want to know what Rommel actually said about facing Patton, and why it became one of the most famous acknowledgements between enemy commanders in World War II, then hit that subscribe button for WW2 War Files right now. Like this video. Drop a comment telling us which World War II general rivalry you want us to cover next. Because what's about to unfold isn't just about two armies clashing, it's about two tactical minds recognizing each other across the battlefield, and what that recognition meant for the rest of the war. Rommel moves to the intelligence map. His finger traces American position. His intelligence officer, Hauptmann Friedrich von Stauffenberg, stands beside him holding the latest reports. Read me the Kasserine casualties again, Rommel says. Von Stauffenberg opens his folder. II Corps suffered approximately 6,000 casualties at Kasserine Pass, Herr Feldmarschall. Lost 183 tanks, 194 half-tracks, 512 wheeled vehicles. Command structure was reported as disorganized and ineffective. Rommel nods slowly. And now? Von Stauffenberg flips to the next page. As of March 6, they've reorganized 3 divisions, established new forward positions near Gufsa and Feriana, and increased patrol activity by 300%. In 48 hours, sir. Rommel looks up sharply. That's not reorganization. That's transformation. Von Stauffenberg hesitates, then continues. Herr Feldmarschall, the prisoners we captured yesterday near Sened Station, they mentioned something. They say there's been a change. New discipline. Stricter command. They keep referring to their new commander as... I know who Patton is, Rommel interrupts quietly. Another officer steps forward. This intercept, Herr Feldmarschall. You're certain it's accurate? Confirmed by 3 separate sources. Von Stauffenberg replies. Prisoner interrogations, radio traffic analysis, and aerial reconnaissance showing his command vehicles arriving at II Corps headquarters on March 4th. Rommel studies the map, and Eisenhower gave him II Corps, the same corps we defeated at Kasserine? Yes, sir. There's a pause. Then Rommel says something that surprises his staff. Then Eisenhower is smarter than I thought. The officers exchange glances. One of them speaks up. Herr Feldmarschall, with respect. These are the same American units we routed 2 weeks ago. Surely one general can't... Rommel cuts him off. You haven't read Patton's work, have you? Sir, his theories on armored warfare, mobile tactics, combined arms coordination. I've read everything he's published. Rommel taps the map. Patton doesn't think like other American commanders. He doesn't think like the British either. He thinks like we do, perhaps more aggressively. The room is silent. Rommel continues studying the map, his mind clearly working through scenarios. Finally, he straightens. Get me a connection to Kesselring's headquarters and von Arnim. I need to speak with them immediately. Because, Rommel, he'd been studying Patton for years, reading his articles, analyzing his pre-war exercises, tracking his career, and what he knew would change everything about how he fought the next battle. That evening, March 6, 1943, Rommel's call goes through to General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring, at German headquarters in Rome. General der Panzertrooper Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, commander of the 5th Panzer Army, joins the conference. Gentlemen, Rommel begins without preamble. I'm requesting authorization to reposition our forces defending the Gafsa sector. American command has changed. Von Arnim's voice comes through skeptical. Changed? Erwin, you defeated them 2 weeks ago. They're still recovering from Kessel. They were recovering, Rommel replies. Patton took command on March 4th. That changes the calculation entirely. Kesselring's tone is diplomatic but doubtful. One American, you've beaten British generals with twice his experience. Montgomery, Auchinleck. Montgomery is methodical, Rommel interrupts. Predictable. Auchinleck was cautious. Patton is neither. Kesselring, I've studied his work. His theories on mobile warfare, armored tactics, combined arms, perhaps more aggressively. Thinking and executing are different matters. Von Arnim counters. These are the same American units we shattered at Kasserine Pass. The same inexperienced soldiers. The same equipment problems. Under different leadership, Rommel says, his voice hardening. Patton will use them differently. He's already repositioning for an offensive. Our reconnaissance confirms it. There's a pause on the line. Then Kesselring speaks. An offensive? After Kasserine? Erwin, they haven't had time to reorganize, let alone plan an offensive operation. That's exactly what I would do in his position, Rommel replies. Attack before we expect it, while we think they're still regrouping. Restore unit morale through action, not through rest and reorganization. It's textbook aggressive warfare. It's exactly what Patton... Another pause. What specifically are you requesting? Kesselring asks. Reinforcements for the Gafsa-Maknassi sector, repositioning of our mobile reserves from the north, and authorization to assume he'll attack within 10 days. 10 days? Von Arnim's voice rises. Impossible. They need at least 3 weeks to... I said the same thing in 1940, Rommel interrupts, when people told me the French couldn't be defeated in 6 weeks. I was wrong then to underestimate speed and aggression. I won't make that... The line is silent for a long moment. Finally, Kessel, your concerns are noted, Erwin. But we cannot redeploy significant forces based on speculation about American intentions. Our resources are stretched thin as it is. This isn't speculation. The decision is final, Kesselring says, his tone leaving no room for argument. Continue monitoring American movements and report any concrete intelligence, but no major repositioning at this time. The line goes dead. Rommel stands at the map table, alone now. His chief of staff enters quietly. Herr Feldmarschall, what are your orders? Rommel doesn't look up from the map. Prepare defensive positions in the Gafsa sector. Strengthen our reconnaissance screen. Position anti-tank units on likely... He pauses. Prepare for contact. Patton will come. Soon. And Rommel was right, but what happened next would shock even him. Not because the Americans attacked, but because of how completely Patton had transformed them in just 72 hours. March 7th through 10th, 1943. Rommel's intelligence officers delivered daily reports that document something unprecedented. The complete transformation of American II Corps in less than a week. The reports come in steadily, each one more surprising than the last. Day 1. Patton institutes strict uniform standards across II Corps. Every soldier is required to wear full uniform, including helmet and leggings, at all times, even in rear areas. Officers caught without proper uniform are fined on the spot. One general is reportedly fined $50 for not wearing his helmet. The message is clear. Discipline starts with appearance. Day 2. Training exercises begin in forward areas, within artillery range of German positions. American units conduct live fire drills using German tactics. Reconnaissance in force, coordinated tank infantry assaults, rapid repositioning. It's aggressive, almost reckless, but it's effective. Unit cohesion visibly improves. Day 3. Patrol activity increases by 300%. American units begin probing German positions, not retreating when fired upon but calling in artillery and pressing attacks. Prisoner interrogations reveal a new confidence. References to their commander as old blood and guts, a belief that things have changed. Rommel's intelligence officer delivers the morning briefing on March 10th. Herr Feldmarschall, American patrols engaged our positions near Sened Station yesterday. They didn't retreat when we opened fire. They called in artillery support and attacked. Rommel looks up from his reports. Casualties? The officer hesitates. Ours or theirs, sir? theirs. Except they press the attack despite taking losses. That's new behavior for them. Rommel nods slowly. That's Patton. Another officer enters with aerial reconnaissance. Herr Field Marshal. New photos from yesterday's flight over American positions. Rommel studies them carefully. American tank units are conducting night movement exercises, something they hadn't done before Patton arrived. Artillery positions are being surveyed and registered with German-style precision. Supply dumps are being moved forward, closer to the front lines. Command posts are repositioning. They're preparing for an offensive, his chief of staff observes. Obviously, Rommel replies. He traces lines on the map, calculating distances, timing, approach routes. The question is when. Surely they need more time, Herr Feldmarschall. It's only been 6 days since Patton took command. Rommel shakes his head. If I were Patton, I wouldn't wait. Every day we have to prepare is a day he loses the element of surprise. He taps the map. March 17th. Perhaps the 16th if he's feeling particularly aggressive. His staff officer stares. That's less than a week, sir, which is why we need to be ready in 5 days. But Rommel's warnings weren't just going to his immediate staff. On March 12th, he sends an urgent tactical assessment directly to Kesselring and to OKW, German High Command in Berlin. The message is blunt. American II Corps under Patton exhibits fundamentally different operational characteristics compared to previous command. Increased tactical aggression, improved coordination between arms, demonstrated willingness to accept casualties for tactical gains, recommend assuming American offensive capability restored to full effectiveness within days, not weeks. Kesselring's response comes back within hours, documented in German military archives. Rommel is overestimating American recovery capability. Assessment here is that IP Corps requires minimum 3 to 4 weeks additional reorganization before offensive operations possible. Continue monitoring but maintain current disposition. Rommel reads the response and sets it aside without comment. His staff waits for his reaction. They don't believe me, one officer says quietly. They will, Rommel replies. In about 5 days, his predictions continue with unsettling accuracy. Forward observers report American tank units conducting night movement exercises, preparing for pre-dawn attacks. Artillery positions are being surveyed and registered, standard preparation for offensive fire support. Supply dumps move forward, reducing the distance supplies must travel once operations begin. Command posts reposition closer to the front, shortening communication lines for fast-moving operations. Rommel's chief of staff reviews the latest reports. They are preparing for an offensive, Herr Feldmarschall. I know, Rommel says. The question is whether Berlin will believe it before it happens. When do you expect them to attack, sir? Rommel studies the map one more time. If I were Patton? Tomorrow. But he'll need a few more days to complete his preparations. March 17th, perhaps the 16th if he's feeling aggressive. That's less than a week. Which is why, Rommel says, turning to his staff, we will be ready in 5 days. Position anti-tank guns on the approaches to Al-Qatar. Strengthen our prepare fallback positions. And make sure every unit commander understands. This will not be like Kasserine. The Americans have changed. But Rommel's warnings about Patton went higher than just Kesselring. What he told Berlin next would be ignored until it was too late. March 17th, 1943. 6 o'clock hours. Exactly when Rommel predicted. The pre-dawn darkness over Tunisia is shattered by artillery fire. American forces under Patton's command launched their offensive against German positions at Gafsa and El Ghetar. The attack has every hallmark of Patton's aggressive tactical style. The artillery barrage is intense, concentrated, professional, nothing like the disorganized fire support at Kasserine. Tank infantry coordination is precise, using German-style combined arms tactics that Rommel recognizes immediately from Patton's pre-war writings. Multiple axes of advance forced German defenders to split their attention, making concentrated defense impossible. And there's no pause, no hesitation, just continuous forward pressure, exactly as Patton's theories prescribed. Rommel is at his command post when the first reports arrive. His units were already positioned for defense. He'd overruled Kesselring's orders and repositioned key assets based on his predictions. Now those predictions are proving accurate. A forward commander's voice cracked. American Isha Panzer advancing on El Ghetar. Multiple columns. Coordinated infantry support. This is not, as a pause. This is not the same American force we faced at Kasserine Pass. Another report comes in minutes later. They're using our own tactics against us. Combined arms, leapfrog advances, artillery walking ahead of armor. A third, request reinforcements, Herr Field Marshal. They're not stopping. They're attacking through our counterfire. Rommel issues orders with calm precision, moving units from his carefully prepared reserves, directing artillery fire, coordinating counterattacks. His staff watches him work, noting the difference from Kasserine. There, Rommel had attacked aggressively, exploiting American confusion. Here, he fights defensively, carefully, almost cautiously. One staff officer asks the question everyone is thinking. How did you know, Herr Feldmarschall? How did you predict the exact date? Rommel doesn't look up from the map. His voice is quiet, because it's exactly what I would have done. Rommel predicted the attack date to the day. His staff thought he was guessing. He wasn't. March 17th through 23rd, 1943. The Battle of El Ghetar. American forces under Patton faced German forces under Rommel in what becomes the first real test of American combat effectiveness in North Africa. But something unusual is happening on the German side, something that Rommel's own officers notice immediately. At Kasserine Pass, Rommel had exploited American inexperience with bold, aggressive maneuvers. Mobile warfare at its finest. The tactics that made him the Desert Fox. Against Patton, he fights differently. Defensive positions. Prepared fallback lines. Controlled withdrawals. It's effective, but it's not typical. The reports coming to German headquarters document this shift. American tank attacks at El Ghetar are being met with prepared anti-tank defenses, not counterattacks. German forces are trading space for time, falling back to prepared positions rather than launching the aggressive flanking maneuvers Rommel is famous for. Most telling, Rommel personally coordinates artillery fire, something he usually delegates to subordinates, suggesting he's taking this battle far more seriously than normal. Italian commanders serving under German command send their own reports to Rome. Rommel, they note, keeps referencing what Patton will do next in planning sessions. He's not just reacting to American moves, he's anticipating them, predicting them. And his predictions keep proving accurate. Then something extraordinary happens. A German signals officer intercepts American radio traffic, unencrypted, careless operational chatter. He brings the intercept to Rommel immediately. Herr Feldmarschall, we have the coordinates for the American command post. General Patton is personally directing operations from a forward observation post. He's within range of our artillery. We can target him now. Rommel looks at the coordinates, then at the map. That's Patton's actual position? Yes, sir. Confirmed by triangulation, he's exposed. We can eliminate their commander. Rommel is silent for a long moment. His staff waits. Finally, he says one word. No. The officer looks confused. Sir? I said no. We will not fire on that position. But, Herr Feldmarschall, we have the opportunity to. Rommel cuts him off, his voice sharp. That's exactly where I would position myself in his situation. Forward, where I can see the battlefield. If we fire on him, he'll know we've better to let him think he's secure and use the intelligence to predict his tactical decisions. Another staff officer speaks up, skeptical. Or we could simply eliminate their commander. Rommel turns to face him. I don't win battles by artillery luck. We'll beat him tactically, or not at all. Though everyone understands what Rommel just revealed. This isn't just another battle for him. This is personal. Not in an emotional sense, but in a professional one. Rommel respects his opponent too much to try to eliminate him through random artillery fire. He wants to beat Patton's tactics, not get lucky with a shell. By March 23rd, the Battle of El Ghetar reaches a tactical stalemate. But it's a stalemate with profound implications. At Kasserine Pass, American forces were routed, defeated, scattered, demoralized. At El Ghetar, they've held their ground against the Afrika Korps. More significantly, Rommel has been forced to commit reserves he wanted to hold back, reposition defensive lines, and fight cautiously. All because Patton changed the equation. German casualties are higher than expected. American morale is soaring. The narrative has shifted. A staff officer delivers the casualty reports to Rommel. Herr Feldmarschall, final assessment from El Ghetar. We held our positions, but what? Our casualties were 1,400 to 2,000, depending on how we count Italian losses. The Americans lost approximately 1,000. Rommel nods slowly. And we fought defensively. They attacked. Yes, sir. Another officer ventures a comment. They got lucky, Herr Feldmarschall. Favorable terrain, good weather. Rommel cuts him off immediately. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Patton prepared them. He gave them the opportunity. That's not luck. That's generalship. The room is silent. No one argues, because everyone present understands what just happened. The Americans, the same force that was destroyed at Kasserine Pass just 5 weeks ago, fought the Afrika Korps to a standstill. And they did it because one general had transformed them in 3 weeks. And when American forces finally hit German lines, Rommel said something to his officers that revealed how he really felt about facing Patton. Words that would define their entire rivalry. March 28, 1943. Rommel's command post, Tunisia. The Battle of El Guitar is over. The American offensive has been stopped but not broken. German lines held but at significant cost. And now Rommel receives the order he's been expecting for weeks. He's being recalled to Germany. Officially, it's for health reasons. Unofficially, everyone knows the truth. The Afrika Korps is doomed. Tunisia will fall. Germany is pulling its most celebrated field commander out before the inevitable collapse. Rommel gathers his senior staff for a final operational briefing before his departure. Reports are stacked beside them. His officers stand at attention. Wait. One staff officer speaks first. Herr Feldmarschall, before your assessment of the American forces. Rommel looks at the map for a long moment. His finger traces the lines showing American positions they've held against everything his forces could throw at them. They learned, he says finally. That's the important thing. At Kasserine, they were disorganized, poorly led, reacting instead of acting. In 3 weeks under Patton, they became something else. Another officer ventures a comment, but we held them at El Guitar, sir. They didn't break through. Rommel turns to face him. We held them because I positioned every available unit to stop them, committed reserves I didn't want to commit, and fought defensively instead of with maneuver. Do you understand what that means? The officer looks uncertain. That we successfully defended? It means Patton forced me to fight his battle, not mine. That's what good generals do. They make you respond to them instead of executing your own plan. The room is completely silent. No one has heard Rommel speak this way about an opponent before. His chief of staff asks the next question carefully. What should we expect from the Americans now, sir? Rommel returns his attention to the map. What you should expect is that they'll keep improving. Patton will push them harder, train them better, and when they invade Europe, and they will invade Europe, they'll be formidable. More formidable than the British? Someone asks. Rommel pauses. This is the question that matters. The one his staff needs answered before he leaves. The one that will determine how they prepare for the future. The British are methodical, professional, experienced. Rommel begins. They fight by doctrine. Montgomery plans carefully, executes precisely, rarely takes unnecessary risks. He's predictable, but that predictability is built on competence. You know what Montgomery will do, and you have to respect that he'll do it well. He pauses again, choosing his words carefully. Patton fights like we do. Aggressive, mobile, willing to take risks for operational gains. He leads from the front. His men follow him, because he shares their danger. When I learned he was commanding against me, I told you all the war in Africa just became more difficult. Another pause. His officers wait. I was wrong. Wrong, sir? His chief of staff asks. Rommel turns to face. It didn't become more difficult. It became interesting. For 3 years, I've fought opponents who were either too cautious or too predictable. The British under Wavell, under Auchinleck, under Montgomery, all competent, all professional, all cautious. The Americans at Kasserine were inexperienced and poorly led. I have waited for a worthy opponent. Now that I've found him, I have to. The words hang in the air. His officers understand what they just heard. Rommel, the Desert Fox, Germany's most celebrated field commander, the general who defeated every British commander sent against him, just acknowledged that he met his match. When you face him again, Rommel continues, his voice taking on a more urgent tone, and you will face him again. Remember this. Patton doesn't fight to win territory. He fights to destroy your ability to resist. Don't give him time. Don't give him space to maneuver. And whatever you do, don't underestimate him because he's American. That's what some of us did at El Guitar, and it cost us. His chief of staff nods slowly. We understand, Herr Feldmarschall. I hope you do, Rommel says quietly, because I won't be here to face him next time. You will. This wasn't just professional respect between enemy commanders. This was Rommel, the legendary Desert Fox, the master of mobile warfare, acknowledging that he'd met his equal. The phrase, "I have waited for a worthy opponent." For nearly 3 years, he'd been fighting opponents he considered either too cautious or too inexperienced. The British were competent but predictable. American generals before Patton were simply unprepared. Rommel had won victories, but they were victories without real challenge. Without an opponent who thought the way he thought, who valued the same tactical principles, who was willing to take the same kinds of risks. Patton was different. He combined German-style tactical aggression with American industrial resources and a willingness to attack that bordered on reckless. Rommel recognized a kindred spirit, someone who understood that modern warfare was about speed, shock, and overwhelming force, applied at the decisive point. More importantly, Rommel's warning to his staff, "Don't underestimate him because he's American," showed that he understood what Berlin didn't yet accept. American forces under aggressive leadership would be a decisive factor in the war. He'd seen the transformation at El Ghetta. In 3 weeks, Patton had taken a defeated, demoralized force and turned it into an effective fighting unit that could stand against the best Germany had to offer. The tragedy, from Rommel's perspective, was timing. He'd finally found an opponent worthy of his tactical skills, someone who could push him, challenge him, make him better. And he was being pulled out of Africa before they could truly test themselves against each other. Rommel left North Africa on March 9, 1943. He never faced Patton in direct battle again, though their indirect rivalry would continue through intelligence reports, operational planning, and mutual respect that transcended the war itself. The Tunisia campaign ended on May 13, 1943, with total Axis surrender. Over 275,000 German and Italian troops were captured, more prisoners than were lost at Stalingrad. American forces under Patton's command had proven themselves combat effective against Germany's elite units. At El Ghetta specifically, the numbers tell the story. American casualties, approximately 1,000. German casualties, estimated between 1,400 and 2,000. More significantly, Rommel, the master of mobile warfare, had been forced into a defensive posture for the first time in North Africa. The psychological shift was enormous. Patton's transformation of II Corps remains one of the most dramatic examples of leadership impact in military history. In 3 weeks, from March 4th to March 23rd, he took a force that had been routed at Kasserine Pass and turned it into an effective fighting unit that could stand against the Afrika Korps. Discipline was restored, tactics were overhauled, confidence was rebuilt, and all of it happened under fire in forward areas with the enemy watching. But Rommel's statement, "I have waited for a worthy opponent," wasn't just about personal rivalry between two generals. It revealed something deeper about how the German military viewed American entry into World War II. In 1941 and 1942, German commanders generally dismissed American military capability. They saw the United States as industrially powerful but militarily inexperienced, a nation that could build tanks and planes but didn't know how to use them effectively. Kasserine Pass seemed to confirm that assessment. American forces were routed, losing more ground in less time than any British force had lost to Rommel. The verdict seemed clear. Americans weren't ready for modern warfare. Then Patton arrived, and in 3 weeks, he changed Rommel's entire assessment of American combat potential, not through propaganda or promises, but through tactical results. El Ghetta proved that American forces, properly led and aggressively employed, could match German forces that had been fighting since 1939. The equipment was the same, the soldiers were the same, but the leadership was different, and that made all the difference. Rommel saw this immediately. His warnings to Kesselring and to German High Command were attempts to prepare the German military for what was coming, a fully mobilized American military machine that combined industrial resources with increasingly effective tactical leadership. But those warnings were ignored. Berlin still believed the Americans needed months to recover from Kasserine. They were wrong. After the war, Rommel's notes, compiled in the posthumously published collection edited by B.H. Liddell Hart, included this assessment written in 1943. "Of the Allied generals I faced, Patton concerned me most, not because he was more skilled than Montgomery. Montgomery was technically proficient and strategically sound, but Patton was unpredictable. He attacked when caution suggested defense. He took risks that no European general would take, and his men followed him because he led from the front, sharing their dangers. This combination, aggression, risk-taking, and personal leadership made him dangerous in ways that methodical commanders were not. Had I remained in Africa, our duel would have been it. That last word, educational, is particularly telling. Rommel, the master of mobile warfare, the general who wrote the book on armored tactics, wanted to learn from Patton. He saw in Patton a reflection of his own tactical philosophy, perhaps even refined and improved by American industrial capability and operational scale. Rommel and Patton never met in person. They never spoke directly. They never shook hands or shared a drink or acknowledged each other face to face. But their indirect rivalry shaped the North African campaign and influenced how both men would fight their later battles. When Rommel was tasked with defending France against the Allied invasion in 1944, his defensive planning specifically accounted for what he called Patton-style aggressive armored tactics, mobile reserves positioned for rapid counterattacks, anti-tank defenses in depth, targeting of supply lines to stop fast-moving operations before they could build momentum. He was preparing to face Patton again, even though they'd never actually fought a full campaign against each other. When Patton landed in France as commander of Third Army, his operational planning reflected lessons from El Guettar: the importance of speed, moving faster than the enemy could react; the value of aggressive reconnaissance, knowing what the enemy was doing before they knew what you were doing; the need to keep enemy commanders reacting instead of planning, forcing them to fight your battle, not theirs. These were lessons learned from the only opponent who'd ever fought him to a tactical draw. In a strange way, they made each other better generals. Rommel learned to respect American combat capability and to plan for aggressive enemy operations. Patton learned that aggressive tactics needed logistical preparation and that even the best attacks could be stopped by properly positioned defenses. Their rivalry became legendary because it was between equals. Two generals who thought about warfare the same way, who valued speed and aggression over caution, who led from the front and inspired absolute loyalty in their troops, who understood that modern warfare was about destroying the enemy's ability to resist, not just capturing territory. Rommel's words in March 1943, "I have waited for a worthy opponent," acknowledged something that German High Command hadn't yet accepted and that many Allied commanders didn't yet realize. The Americans were no longer the inexperienced force that stumbled at Kasserine Pass. They were becoming a military power that could challenge and defeat German forces when properly led. And it had taken just 3 weeks under Patton's command to make that transformation visible. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, captured German officers were interviewed by Allied intelligence. They were asked which Allied commanders they'd most feared during the war. The answer, almost universally, was a tie: Montgomery for his methodical precision and overwhelming preparation, and Patton for his aggressive unpredictability and willingness to take risks. But when asked which commander they'd most wanted to face in battle, as a test of their own tactical skills, as a measure of their own capabilities, the answer was always Patton, because Rommel had set the standard. After El Guettar, every German commander who'd read the operational reports understood why Rommel had said what he said. Patton wasn't just another Allied general with more tanks and planes. He was a tactician who thought like German commanders thought, who valued what they valued, who fought the way they fought. He was, in Rommel's words, a worthy opponent. And in war, that's the highest compliment one commander can give another. The race to Messina, the breakout from Normandy, the relief of Bastogne, the drive across France into Germany, all of these operations bore Patton's tactical signature. All of them reflected lessons learned in those 3 weeks in Tunisia, when he faced Rommel across the battlefield and proved that American forces properly led could match anyone. Rommel never got his rematch. He was pulled from Africa, assigned to defend Italy briefly, then sent to France where he was seriously wounded in an Allied air attack and later forced to take his own life after being implicated in the plot to overthrow Hitler. But his assessment of Patton, written in March 1943 after just 3 weeks of indirect combat, proved prophetic. Patton was dangerous, not because he had more resources, though he did, not because he had better equipment, though sometimes he did, but because he thought differently. He attacked when others would defend. He took risks when others would consolidate. He pushed his forces harder and faster than anyone thought possible, and his men followed him because he led from the front, because he shared their dangers, because he believed in what they could accomplish. That's what Rommel recognized at El Guettar. That's what made him say he'd finally found a worthy opponent. And that's what made their brief, indirect rivalry one of the most famous command relationships of World War II. Two generals, two tactical minds, two philosophies that were remarkably similar despite fighting for opposite sides. And 3 weeks in Tunisia, that changed how both sides viewed American combat capability for the rest of the war. If you made it this far, you're the kind of history enthusiast we create content for here at WW2 War Files. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the untold stories of World War II. Smash that like button if you learned something new today, and drop a comment telling us which World War II general or battle you want us to cover next. Your support keeps these forgotten stories alive. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.